Hey, YouTube family, and welcome to another edition of the Kevin Strong Show. And in this video, we're going to talk about, is the city of Seattle doomed? Has Seattle fallen? That's the title of this video. There's been a video that was put out, I think about a year or so ago, that talked about, is Seattle dying? Very interesting, kind of talking about the homeless plight and things like that. I am going to touch on that briefly, but more importantly, I'm going to give you a different spin on this. I'm going to go into some data talking about crime, housing, debt, multifamily living in the greater Seattle area. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I think it's a little bit different. And I think at the end of this video, not only will you be well informed, I think it will compel you to share this video because it is unique with the data associated with it. So before I get into the video, you know what I'm going to ask for? Please smash that like button because I care. You got to help out a BBH. What is a BBH? Ball, black, and happy. So help a brother out. Smash that like button if you're enjoying this content. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to my channel. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this. Like I said, this is going to be a very, very interesting, if I can get this thing to add. Okay, so here we go. The title of this is A Fallen City. Can Seattle turn it around? So like I said, we're going to go ahead and get into this. This is going to be a little bit of a longer video than I've done in the past, but I think you're going to find it very enlightening in terms of the information I share with you, along with my editorial comment. So let's go ahead without further ado and go ahead and jump into this first slide. This deals with the homeless population. We all know about this. So this is the most recent statistics, I think, as of 2022. Seattle is ranked 5th, or basically the state of Washington, more importantly, is ranked 5th in the nation in homelessness. So the way you read this particular slide is that I've got the Washington stats highlighted in yellow. And the columns are 1, 2, 3, and 4. So that first number of 22,923 deals with homeless population, the homeless population in the entire state of Washington. The second column is 2,116. That deals with the home households in the state of Washington. The third column, which is a higher number, is 6,756. That is chronic, problematic homelessness in the state of Washington. So one thing you can deduce from that is that the chronic homelessness, that number from that standpoint is only behind California and New York. Obviously, California at 51,000 at the top of row 3, and then New York coming in second place at roughly 7,500. So that is a growing problem. So you have to look at these numbers individually and then look at it collectively. Last but not least, homeless adult population in the state of Washington is 1,777. So overall, the state of Washington, as you guys know, has a very, very serious problem with homelessness. As you can tell from these stats, it not only affects households, but it affects individual adults and kids at large. So very, very interesting situation as to what are the solutions for homelessness out there. I think there's I don't know, to be quite honestly. You know, I'm kind of doing this on the fly, not in terms of the research that I've done, but my editorial comments about homelessness. I don't really have a solution for it, but it's a very sad and problematic problem that the city and the state has to address. So let's talk about population. Now, this is something that I had to basically take a fall back on because these numbers have changed from year over year. This information is based on 2022 data. So Seattle actually grew a little bit in 2022. Now, there's people that recently have moved out of Seattle within the last 6 to 8 months. So this information is kind of lagging a little bit, but just kind of bear with me. Kent, which is basically the Kent is the 6th largest city in the state of Washington, and this population has exploded. Kirkland, Bellevue came in at number 4. There's a lot of tech jobs, very affluent. opulent areas in the Bellevue area. Coming in here at number 8, Spokane. That's on the eastern side for some of you folks who are watching this video and not familiar with some of these cities as it applies in the state of Washington. It's about 4 hours east of the greater Seattle area. They had a big problem last year. 1 out of 3 residents in that area couldn't even pay for their utility bill. So as home prices start to come down, if you're looking to invest, that might be a great opportunity to look into. Tacoma comes in, I believe, at number 10. And I think around 2019, just before the healthcare crisis, I think either 2018 or 2019, Tacoma was listed as one of the fastest growing cities in the entire United States. So I'm going to go ahead and just leave that up for a couple minutes. I'm not going to make an editorial comment about each individual city, but this is the data based on 2022, but it's a very fluid statistic. We're going to go ahead and jump into some key points here. Now, this deals with crime data. So this is something that I'm familiar with, that knows those of you who know me in the daytime, so to speak. So there's a website that's called citydata.com, and it's actually city-data.com, as you can see up here. And this deals with crime statistics. And this is a very, very important stat because the way they calculate crime statistics, you can apply the formula in any major metro in the United States. So without getting you guys confused, I want you to look at the second line in this slide, and then you see numbers that are spaced out, starting from 438.1, then it goes to 447.3, 439.3, 449.6, and finally 396.6. So what do those last 5 numbers represent? So the crime index, based on citydata.com, the closer the number is to 500, that's a bad number from a crime standpoint. Ironically, the last 5 years, from a crime index standpoint, the city of Seattle has actually seen a decrease in overall crime. That doesn't mean that homicides are not, that wasn't a Freudian slip, by the way. That doesn't mean homicides are going down, but overall composite of all crime is actually trending down as of 2022. Now, will that change in the future? More than likely, but that's just an interesting stat that's kind of organic. And if anybody's interested in seeing information like that, you can go to that website. So according to our research, this is from citydata.com. The research in other states, let me start over. According to our research of Washington and other states listed, there are 495 registered sex offenders living in Seattle, Washington as of January 27th of 2023. So this is very recent data. The ratio of all residents to sex offenders in Seattle is 1,423 to 1. The ratio of registered sex offenders to all residents in this city is lower than the state average. So once again, that's something that just looking and just the feel that you get listening to different news outlets, you would get the impression that that number is way, way, way higher than what it actually is. But the numbers don't lie, at least some of the time. All right, let's go up to the racial composition. No, I don't have any jokes for this slide, but as you can see, based on the city data here, 62% of the population in the greater Seattle area or in the city of Seattle is basically white. 7.3% is yours truly. I got to slide it in there somehow. 5.6 2+ races or other races. You've got almost a 17% Asian population and a 6.6% Hispanic population in the city of Seattle. So that's not a bad makeup. Obviously, we need more diversity in the greater Seattle area, and I think that is happening. And that's actually a good mix-up, believe it or not, from a home standpoint and from an investment standpoint. You need that kind of diversity in terms of racial compositions. So let's hope that that continues in the future. Okay. Crime on the rise. Is it or is it or not? So once again, like I said, I spent a lot of time on this getting some data for you guys. Number of Seattle Police Department officers that are in service. This basically goes from 2013, as you can see at the top of the slide, to 2022. So as you can see in 2019, at the top there was basically 1,281 officers in service. And obviously, since the virus, there's been very controversial things about mandatory vaccinations. A lot of police officers felt that that was basically infringing on their civil liberties. And a lot of them decided basically to just turn their badge in and not serve anymore. The other side of that is that there's a lot of people who feel that the administration and city council and the city at large was not supporting a lot of the officers. As a result, that was a main or contributing factor to a mass exodus of officers either going to other departments or just flat out retiring. As a result of that, you see that the number of officers in service is down to 954, and that number is getting low by the day. So, as a result of not having that many officers in service, what does that mean for when you call 911 in Seattle? Well, once again, this is an interesting graph that I was able to pick up. This is the citywide average response time based on priority. So, from a priority standpoint, let's just think of it in its most simplistic form. 1, 2, and 3, obviously 1 being the most critical, right? Those are the type of calls typically a lot of times that you're going to be running to lights and sirens, right? A high priority call, right? And as you can see from 2019 all the way up to 2020, the response time to those calls have gone up from 8.7 to 8.9 to 10 to actually 10.3. But it doesn't seem like a lot. But if you look at it from 2019, which was 8.7, up to 2022, which is 10.3, that's a significant increase in response time. Look at the orange bar, which is priority 2. That started off in 2019 at 37.8, and now it's at 54.0, right? Just for easy math, that's probably easily well over a 50% increase in response time. And last but not least, low priority calls started in 2019 at 82.2, and now they're at 99.9, basically well over 10 to probably close to 15% increase in response time. So one can deduce from the previous slide and this slide that with less police officers, and as a result of that, it's taking them longer to respond to calls. And as a result of that, you could probably conclude from the immediate future that some of those crime stat numbers that I was showing you might start to trend back up towards that 500 crime index. Let's go here with the next slide. Obviously, job cuts. So we know about this. So here's a guy that has an artificial intelligence firm that deals with information technology. And he's basically saying, he said the cuts could worsen. I do agree with that. I think we're just scratching the surface. 2023 will be worse from what I am hearing from customers and CIOs, Chief Information Officers. Everybody knows about Microsoft, Amazon, Twitter. Redfin has the corporate office in the greater Seattle area. All of the aforementioned are laying off, and I think there's going to be more layoffs to come. These are very high-paying jobs. Most of these people are probably homeowners, so unless they're living well below their means, and most people at that income bracket do not, they may have adequate reserves, some of them, but they do not live well below their means. For an example, if you have a household income of $400,000 or $500,000, you're not living at $200,000 or $150,000. That would be the exception to the rule, right? Bigger house, bigger cars, bigger toys. So this is going to have an immediate impact on people's abilities to pay their bills, to pay their mortgages. And as a result of that, you're going to see a lot of distressed sellers either putting their home on the market or having to basically get foreclosed on because they can no longer afford the property. So here's an interesting stat too. Once again, the 10 states and states that are designated with the highest credit card debt. This is why I told you guys to watch this video. Nobody's talking about this. That other video that deals with Seattle that's dying did not, in my opinion, lift the proverbial hood up and get into some of this consumer stuff that's affecting Seattle. But more importantly, I know this stat is not Seattle, but obviously Seattle is one of the largest cities that makes up the overall population in the state of Washington. So one could deduce that, there's a higher concentration of credit card debt in the greater Seattle area if the state overall came in at number 3. So as you can see that Alaska's number 1, District of Columbia is 2, Oregon, which is right next to us, came in at 6, and Colorado rounded off this top 10 and the 10th spot. So you see this little bullet point I have here at the bottom: high home prices and a lot of consumer debt. And if you put that all in a pot and then sprinkle a little layoffs on it, and we are a tech-based industry, this is a recipe for disaster in terms of an economic pullback in the greater Seattle area to the housing market. So I was talking about housing a little bit. So let's do a little bit of a deep dive into this. Once again, I got this information from Redfin. Pending home sales fell 50% in Seattle from a year ago, marking the third largest drop among major metropolitans, basically according to the Redfin data as of October of 2023. So here's some bullet points that I was able to extract from Redfin. Pending home sales year over year are down 46% in Seattle. Okay. Medium sales price year over year is down 2%. So now that medium sales price is $717,000. Earlier, probably around May or June, the medium sales price was like at $850,000. So those of you out there who had that narrative that's saying, oh, year over year is still positive, even though month over month is a more relevant snapshot of the trend, now that year over year narrative is gone. Medium new listings year over year are down 0.59% to almost $695,000. And new listings, people who are putting their property on the market, is down almost 46%. So think about this. Not that many people are listing their homes, but despite that, what's happening? Home prices are going down, even though the inventory is kind of a mixed bag, so to speak. So maybe those people feel that they're trapped, that if they decide to sell their homes, they do not want to buy into a much higher interest rate and have a higher mortgage payment. So there's a lot of things that are going on in the housing market, but I think Seattle has made a lot of ominous list in terms of negative information as it relates to the housing market. Couple slides here, and we're going to wrap this up. Forced rezoning, discussion about if this becomes law. So there's some bills that have been proposed that they want to address the lack of affordability and the lack of housing in the greater Seattle area. Don't be surprised in the next 12 to 24 months as this housing crisis continues to unfold and exacerbates, in my humble opinion. I think you're going to see a lot of cities deciding to rezone a lot of areas. Basically, areas that were traditionally zoned for single family residents. Areas that were traditionally zoned for businesses, commercial businesses, or mixed use, were going to have some opportunities to get rezoned for single family residents. I think that's going to happen in the greater Seattle area and in Pierce County as well. So what does this mean for you guys out there? In my humble opinion, if you want a chess move, this is what I think. If that happens, I think areas like in Pierce County, where I'm in, Buckley, Lake Tapps, Bonnie Lake. Bonnie Lake is kind of over commercialized, but you'll see where I'm going with this in a minute. Puyallup, Spanaway, Ording, these places that are south in the Pierce County area, those home prices over the next 5 to 7 years will explode in value once we get out of this housing crash that I think is coming in the greater Seattle area. The reason why I say that, folks, is because people like traditional houses in traditional neighborhoods. Even though we know we have to deal with homelessness, even though we know we have to deal with affordable housing, if and when rezoning becomes a prevalent, widespread acceptance in most areas, people will move away from those areas and opt to move in areas that have a traditional single-family housing look. So I know Enumclaw's a little bit rural. You're going to see that explode in terms of building and people moving there because they want that traditional home neighborhood feeling. Okay, summary. Last but not least, Seattle will continue to experience issues with crime. I think this is going to happen because of the lack of police officers. If you're an experienced police officer, the city of Seattle is offering a $30,000 bonus. That's not helping. So, and that's something that doesn't turn around quickly. So, even though the numbers kind of indicate overall that crime is down, expect it to pick up because there's just not enough men and women out there doing what they need to do. Home prices will decline in 2023 and possibly into 2024. I think this area, specifically the greater Seattle area, is going to get hit harder than other metropolitan areas because we have a tech-based economy, for lack of better words. Tech layoffs will continue in 2023 and maybe well into the second quarter of 2024. High-paying jobs will add more pressure onto the housing market, as I've talked about earlier in this video. The Seattle metro area has already become a divided region of have and have-nots. Many will become renters for life. I had a video that I produced a week ago, and I was talking about the house payment to income ratio is way out of whack. Until that comes back down to a norm where people's incomes can afford the average medium homes in the greater Seattle area, you're going to continue to see people priced out of home ownership. And as a result of that, because of high credit card debt, remember that slide, we have more consumer debt as a nation than we've ever had in history. A lot of people are going to be priced out of home ownership in the greater Seattle area for a long time and potentially for the rest of their life. So what are some solutions here? Consider house hacking or buying a double or duplex, rinse and repeat to create passive income before you buy a single family residence. So what do I mean by house hacking? You know, maybe you get a two-family. I keep saying two-family because I'm from the Midwest. You buy a duplex, you live in one half, and you rent out the other half. And you can use the other half to help qualify for the mortgage if you have a signed lease. You can do this with FHA and VA. They do require you to have some reserves. I know you can go all the way up to a four-suiter, I think, with FHA and VA, but I think at that point in time, whatever the payment is going to be for a four-suiter, if you want to use the income in the other three suites, then I think you have to have 6 months of the payment. So hypothetically, if you buy a fourplex and your payment is $5,000 a month and you need the tenants in that four-suiter to help you qualify for that mortgage, the lender's going to want to see that you've got $30,000 in reserve. That's how that works. So it's a very, very good way to get into the housing market, especially for you younger families out there. I would encourage you to do that because, especially if you have young kids where they're not in school yet, maybe you could pitch the wife and say, hey, why don't we buy a double, rent it out? It helps us get home ownership. We start to, hopefully accumulate some equity and some appreciation over a period of time. And then maybe after a couple years, you move out of there and then you buy another one. If your child is under the age of 5 and is not really in school yet or just in daycare, this won't have an impact on their lifestyle as much. And I think you can convince your significant other or your wife to say, hey, what if we do this 1, 2, or 3 times before John or Jane becomes 5 years old? Now we've got 3 duplexes. We've got 6 streams of income coming in, and now we can buy the home that we want in the neighborhood that we want. And now that our kid is getting ready to start school, we can settle down and become a part of a community. So it's somewhat of a back step, but it's a forward-looking way if you want to look at a creative way to getting into housing. And finally, last but not least, like I say, consider investing in multifamily units. Great long-term play because low vacancy rates due to steady population growth. So I think multifamily in the long run is a home run in the greater Seattle area. I have just decided to leave residential real estate. I shouldn't say leave, but no longer focus on residential real estate and focus more on commercial, specifically multi-family. So the name of the brokerage company that I'm with is called My International Real Estate. Very excited about this. Only 5% of real estate agents even deal with commercial. It's a lot more complex. You have to be somewhat math orientated. These are longer deals, but sometimes the payoff can be a lot greater. For the record, I am a licensed real estate agent and I do have a mortgage license. So let me go ahead and back out of this. I know I told you guys this was a super long video. a lot longer than the one. So I hope you really enjoy that. So what's my overall opinion? I think Seattle's going to take a significant pullback in the next 18 to 24 months. I do think there's going to be opportunity for those who keep their powder dry, keep your credit score up, and keep your debt down. I think it's important for you to get your debt under control so you can take advantage of some of this opportunity that's going to present itself. This was the Kevin Strong Show. Once again, if you have not subscribed to my channel, please do so now, and also hit that like button. Please share this content because, once again, I think this is a different spin on looking at Seattle with all the data opposed to the other videos that are out there that are talking about, is Seattle dying? I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you guys. I hope you're enjoying my show, and I'll see you guys in the next video.